Hey guys, it's fun to be here. I am Andrew Sear. Excited to be here building a reality which I believe will revolutionize the world and provide a system and infrastructure that doesn't yet exist, for which my values can flourish here, which are built around freedom and self-sovereignty and autonomy and communities coming together to pool their economic resources and creating something brand new that the world hasn't seen.
Awesome. Nice to meet you.
Yeah, nice to meet you. Yeah.
Now, we all know each other from various pursuits, I would say. My name is Lee Papathanassiou. I'm the Chief Product Officer. I'm throwing a title down. Of Reality Network, working here with Wyatt and team to try to build the future, basically, and kind of realize what Andrew said so eloquently. But yeah, we all, I think, know that there's a lot of problems to solve in the world today, and we're trying to solve them, at least some small part of them, through this technology. So,
thanks. I'm Wyatt. Really just a programmer with a dream that wants to make it a reality. We're building the thing that we build, and that's what I do, and I love it, and this is my thing.
I'm Keenan, Wyatt's co-founder. I program things and speak when required.
Me too.
I'm Brian, and I'm handling governance for Reality. I've been following Reality for a long time. I believe that the tech is revolutionary, and I think that it's really just a matter of time before everyone else realizes this. I was going to suggest, will we tell people where we are and what we're up to?
Yeah.
So, I should.
So,
welcome, Brian. Where are we?
Welcome to the Gryffindor common room.
Yeah. So we're up a mountain in Catalonia, and it's our first company meetup. It's the first time that many people here have actually met each other in person after many years, and it's like kind of our launch party in a way, right? It's great to meet all these people in person after years over Zoom and Google Meet. It's been good.
Yeah, it's been hot.
It's a really big deal, really special place. Even if we took videos and photos of it, it would not do it justice. We're basically on the top of a giant mountain, and we're like channeling divine inspiration. You just have to trust us.
And we can finally see the sun.
Yeah, man. The rain was coming. It's like, guys, we're gonna make it rain. This is literally it.
Okay. What inspired the creation of RealityNet?
Dude, what did? Can someone give me a line? What did inspire the creation of RealityNet? Anyone? You're like, oh my God, how does this guy not know the answer? Dude, I don't know. I mean, at least for me, I really dig. For my own personal self and my story, I kind of was really interested in science and physics and whatnot, did that for a while. And, as I kind of went and got a job, worked as a programmer, I still was kind of interested in asking these kind of questions and shit about how stuff works. And I found there to be kind of some overlap in how distributed systems or ways that we get computers to work together to do stuff, kind of relates to other questions, fundamental things about how, the world and the universe and whatnot works. I've oftentimes talked about that really big Leslie Lamport paper, and how he basically talks about, the solution to, synchronizing distributed systems kind of comes from special relativity with Einstein and whatnot. And it's just kind of, it's cool to do something that inspires you naturally. So I just kind of did it because, I like to think about that stuff, and in a lot of ways it's really a meditation on just what defines our experiences as a whole. And that's kind of why the whole blockchain thing was super cool to me, is because in a lot of ways it's like a truth machine. This is a way that we can come up with some thing that we can accept within some margin of error as an actual fact. And in a lot of ways we still live in kind of a fairy tale land where certain people get to declare the way shit is. And so that's what it is. It's kind of like a truth machine, and kind of a way also to I hated my day job, and so we have this company that we all get to work on things we love now, and that's it. That was it. That's why I did it. All right.
Yeah, I can. I mean,
You go.
Yeah, go for it.
Yeah. So I mean, like basically, like Wyatt just like explained how to navigate through the digital information space of like gaslighting and all sorts of misinformation and like just or conflicting information, right? And like the issue essentially is like how do you parse through all of that? And I think through reality you can actually establish the origin of information or even who the author of that information is or the device that's producing that information, if it's a sensor that's telling you something about some remote location's temperature, for example. All these things play into like your consensus reality of like the information that we consume. And I think now more than ever. In the past, like, I'd say like even a decade ago, we're still in like more of a naive state where we did rely on digital information, but at the same time it wasn't at the level of velocity that we have now and the accessibility of it, right? Because just our phones and everything are just constantly with us. And then you have virtual reality, you have all these other fun things, right? And so everything is kind of accelerating. So the fire hose is getting bigger. And then it's like, how do you, really just judge or assess the information that you're consuming? And like, so like the truth machine concept is like figuring out a way to organize that information so that when we do, digest it, if you will, whether it's even an AI too, right? So it's not just humans we're talking about here too. So now there's autonomous agents that are also consuming the same information. So it's like, how do you make sure that the information you're consuming is accurate, or at least you have like as Wyatt said, like a measure of accuracy to judge the reliability of that information, which then leads into like the whole other kind of like future prospects of like automation. Because like once you start making automated decisions using software or AI or whatever, becomes even more of a problem, more of an importance to like solve this problem. So I think it's like very, like it's almost like just like, I think like it just came at the right time. Like these ideas that we all see, like these criticisms of all these things, like kind of just like confluence together into like, okay, how do we solve this problem? Well, there's like this emerging blockchain technology, although it needs to be improved in many different ways, which I'm sure we'll talk about. Yeah. How does that integrate? How does that interoperate with the rest of our digital reality, right? And like, through the reality network, that's how, right? Like that's the idea, right? So.
Yeah, it's almost as if reality is a technology shift, like it's an actual shift in consciousness of what's possible. And then crypto is just simply the distribution of it. It's not like this is a crypto project and that's all this is about. It's just like, oh, the way that value is going to be transferred from this new global next level dimensional network of the internet is through crypto, is through tokenization as the backbone, as the infrastructure. But it's actually far greater than just crypto.
Yeah.
There's something far bigger going on here.
Yeah, it's not just a financial instrument. It's
Yeah.
like actually how do you verify not only like a payment, but like the information, right? That's the next level, I think.
Yeah, I'd add like we live in a time where knowledge and truth and facts are contested, and it is very dishonest to pretend otherwise. But most of the political authorities that we have, our cultural authorities, pretend that we all kind of have this common pot of knowledge. It's epistemological collectivism. Like, oh, this is the truth of our, and there's no room for divergence. And I think that is very dishonest of them. And what reality does is essentially enables many different perspectives to be converged without negating any one of them. I think that's probably my view of it as a truth machine.
Yeah.
Oh man, that's fucking nailed it. I mean, like, I mean, what really even like is like the truth? You know what I mean? Like, because everybody's perspective is completely different about like certain events. So you kind of just have to share experiences together in order to really like form like something that happened. And like, the actual tech itself is like a way for all of us to connect together and share experiences. Although specifically about financial data at this point. But yeah, I mean, at its core, it really is just the process that we all do implicitly every day with our like friends and family and, our actual various different worlds that we live, whether it's at the office or whatnot. Like the experiences there are that reality, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think there's different levels of analysis. When we look at blockchain technology, we can look at it just as a shared database or a shared computer, or we can just look at it as a coordination mechanism, right? And so for the most part, we interact with these centralized services, like our bank account. And for the most part, they do a pretty good job. But what we have now is the ability to use like a set of cryptographic primitives where we don't need to trust these kind of black box servers, where we have no control. We can verify.
Right.
You know, it's kind of, I love to touch on this, and I probably talk about this all the time, but like, this fundamental question about like what actually is going on and like what is happening, it goes back super duper far. It's still an unanswered question. I think the best like formulation of the question was from like our boy Plato, right, in the cave allegory. And what's really cool about these like phones that we use is that they're basically like mini scrying devices that, John D level, and we kind of use this thing to like talk in this weird digital world that kind of blends, the metaphysical and the physical. And what this thing is it's almost just kind of like, it's kind of like a sunglasses or like something to sort of clear your, black scrying device. So you can actually introspect on the shared experiences happening rather than have it be completely distorted by people who, I think in a lot of ways, like most of the modern economy is completely driven by distorting people's reality. And so this is kind of just a way that we can sort of almost like open up a portal for us to exit the cave and stop looking at finger puppets and really just experience the real world on our own terms.
Yeah. And I think it's just like that, the dissolution of the middleman, the dissolution of the party that's in between all of us humans that like we have historically have had to rely on, governments and banks and middlemen and centralized exchanges who have the advantage of information arbitrage. They hold back information for their own profits, and they take a margin, even if they are giving us the right information. They're in the middle. And we are, decentralization is really just about, it's a unifier, it's a tool of connection. And to have this permissionless open network, an open order book is a free market. And so it's like, what if everything was just open? What if we just saw the whole mempool, the value exchange for every data asset to be seen at the price that it wants to be sold and bought for is revolutionary. That's never been open like that before.
Do completely, and it's basic. So there's this dude. I'm pretty sure he was a mathematician, not an economist, and he was like at NYU, and he formulated just like, well, it gets back to like why the reality and like why do we do the shit the way that we do, right? Well, if you look at things like like systemic processes, like even our society from the lens of like physics, you can come up with some really interesting like, I don't know, just facts, things that are pretty provable. One was this dude who reformulated how like an economy works by mapping it from how we model electromagnetism, or basically make like superconductors and stuff, and basically by describing transactions inside of like a free market using like I think it was basically like electrical, I'm not going to get into it. Basically, finding a way to connect that to electromagnetism. He basically showed that, like, so in an actually optimal economy, we all agree that you can't have like arbitrage, right? That's like sort of the definition. But you can't prevent arbitrage like fundamentally until you solve a problem of information asymmetry, or the people who actually serve up the order book can't have the ability to sort of distort the reality of that order book. So in crypto, we call this rug pulling. People manipulate markets and stuff, and that's just sort of part of it. But in this sort of paradigm, it really just gives people access to all the information necessary to make decisions about their own financial freedom, which is kind of the most important bedrock of actually creating your own autonomy and sovereignty in like society, right? What's the adage? First get rich, then get even, then get legal, or something. But I don't know. Sorry. Probably shouldn't hang out with those guys, but yeah. And I mean, when you look at this stuff from just a different perspective, especially things where we can like, we know them to be true so much as we can like engineer and build things with them, like these fundamental physical laws about how electrons work. I mean, it's the same thing. They're really just information inside of the electromagnetic field, right? So if we're just dealing with information on some type of like a digital market, we need to actually have some guarantees around information. Otherwise, like, if you look at the chart, you're not going to be in the perfect optimal spot. And it's kind of silly that nobody's even really thought about it or pointed it out today. Like, people talk about like, oh, like I'm for the free markets or I'm for socialism or some shit. And it's like, bro, we've never even like tried a free market. Anytime we come even close, like something happens and you know, things sort of go back to the way that they are. But I don't know. What's really cool about doing this all in this decentralized way is that it's kind of like a chimera, man. Like, it's on every single phone and device out there, and like, good luck stopping that. So I don't know. In a lot of ways, this is a great shot for all of us to give a free market economy a shot, and I do believe in it. I know it's corny to say, but I don't know of anything better, and nobody's ever tried it, so I think we should fucking try it.
Hell yeah.
Yeah.
And just to like recontextualize a little bit,
Yeah, word.
I think just like if someone's just watching this or listening to this, like, what's reality at its like fundamental kind of concept? It's like a decentralized network where you're permissionlessly hosting people's applications, decentralized applications, and also having this, you know, open order book exchange of tokens between these different applications. Is that accurate kind of description? And like, so I just want to kind of like set that just to understand, because like we can go down these like rabbit holes without actually being like, oh wait, by the way, this is
why this matters. So we have this new thing where we don't do gas fees. The best new thing ever. Yeah, basically, like, I call it crypto communism. Like, gas fees don't work. They never have worked. You don't get to just fix prices. When the fuck has that ever worked? Well, why is that going to work for, you know, that? So, yeah, we've literally created an open order book for individuals who pay for goods and services using bids, just like in a stock market or whatnot. The actual price and value of what your thing is worth is based on the demand, and it's really just what's necessary to create an actually healthy economy. And if these different, like, you know, DApp platforms, for lack of a better term, are supposed to be their own kind of economy, like, I don't know, man. I think we can do better than price fixing.
Yeah. A question about how is the mobile-driven approach, like where we're building a mobile app, we're building a desktop app, the vision here is at internet scale to really, like, the capabilities and the capacity of this network are limitless in the sense of as much compute power there is in the world, that's how much space reality can really take up. So just curious on like the network design and like through meeting devices and meeting people where they're at, which is in the Web 2 world. You want to speak to that?
Yeah, I mean, this is my old tagline, but like the kind of way that blockchains or like the infrastructure that we use in the crypto space was built is reminiscent of the the stuff was built a long time ago using old-timey methods, and now the Web 2 world uses like new-timey methods, and like there's just a fundamental disconnect between, you know, how a linear blockchain works and how every single, like, you know, consumer, like, user-facing app on the Web 2 world works. It's just, you're not going to scale it. People tried, they didn't, and that's why they invented these new types of architectures. And the reality of the situation here is that the computational power necessary to like run the internet as a whole doesn't live inside of like server farms or like behind ISPs anymore. It's like in all of our pockets. And basically, yeah, I mean, the real value proposition, I think, for even just having new infrastructure in the crypto space is decentralizing it further. Because as we've seen, you know, even mining farms and proofs of stake have kind of gone back to, we've reverted back to like the way the regular kind of like authoritative economy works, because people couldn't solve like fundamental scalability or like infrastructure problems. And so, like, you know, we're trying to basically come back with the original promise of what crypto was by, you know, dead to rights giving you a decentralized like connection to this network. Like, if everybody mines it, then that's the real level of decentralization that makes it like not manipulatable, and like at least gives us like this experiment or this like ethos that we like want to make happen. If you want to make something decentralized, every single person needs to be able to participate in this, because that's actually what decentralization means. It doesn't just mean like a few dudes or like 1,000 dudes. It means everyone, and everybody's got a phone, and all these different phones have enough capacity to contribute to this whole kind of thing, this whole network that I mean, it needs friends to operate. So yeah, man, it's we want to tap into the scrying device. We want to be that scrying device application that helps you see like the truth and then tries to create it with your peers. And you know, that's the thing in your pocket that connects you to us all.
Yeah.
So put the node on that.
I think we've definitely seen centralization in mining on other chains, whether it's because you need large stake or because you need specialized mining hardware. So for us, I like to think of it as kind of Kickstarter, but instead of offering money, you offer your computer. So let's say there's some product you believe in, and they want to get started, but servers are expensive. To help them get started, you could offer your computer to run a server for them, right? And so I think we care a lot about these client applications because we want everybody to be able to contribute and be part of the network in a way that is appropriate for them.
The whole thing too about crypto is it's not just about like tokens, and actually just like the whole trading financial thing. Like there are you need to like get involved with people and like actually help make projects happen. Like this is a way for people to like launch their ideas and their visions and their dreams and stuff. And right now, the only real way to support a project is by like giving it money and like buying a token in an ICO. But like, all of us can actually like contribute something we have in our pocket right now, which is those clock cycles, right? So we have this concept that we call mineable apps, where if you actually really like a project, you can get involved in a way where you actually host it rather than just like buy in. And for a lot of people who maybe just have some old computers and shit sitting around, I know we all do, this is a way that we can all get involved and make some tokens. In a way that works for us.
Yeah, one thing to add too is like most startups now, when they go to VCs with their begging bowl, need money to pay for cloud costs.
Yeah.
Right. So it's like there's this massive like bottleneck in terms of like innovation. Like people are trying to start cool projects, but they have to go and give a big chunk of their equity to a VC firm just to pay for cloud costs.
Yeah.
And it's like that's got to be disrupted.
And the irony of the whole Web3 space is that most of it is sitting on AWS or sitting on centralized server farms. And by claiming Web3 in name doesn't really mean that it is that in design. And while there are so many quote-unquote infrastructure projects out there, yet there is still no infrastructure out there that can support the ideas that what people can build on reality, which are really next level generational ideas, things that can really affect like not only governance, but healthcare, education, anything that where humans want to come together, pool their economic power and create lasting change in the world through voting and governing themselves, and not in the way that crypto has been dealing, especially with governance, which is just like through the lens of DAOs, or just like buy a token and then like maybe vote on some iffy proposal which you probably don't care about. The difference with reality is that by participating in the network, you are actually owning a part of the network, which is a novel concept. And it's not just in words, it's in actuality. And so when we own something, we care about it. And we can see this like when you walk through neighborhoods where people are renting versus where people are owning homes. Homeowners care about their lawns, and they care about the streets, and they care about cleanliness. And in neighborhoods where people are typically renting, there isn't as much care about the neighborhood. And so by giving people a voice, where every participant, where every human is ground truth on this network, there is a sense of ownership. And then the generative economics of it all is really like any network, any blockchain that builds on us now has a community which is hosting their own network. Their phones, their computers are sharing compute. They're getting rewarded. There's a caring about owning a part of the network and molding its future. Yeah,
and compare it to like the current state of the internet and internet companies, where people are essentially like serfs in a neo-feudal digital like fiefdom. And basically you can be deplatformed over nothing. You can basically have most of your value or your revenue taken by extortionate platform fees. And like all of that is essentially crippling people's ability to innovate and create cool shit as well. So it's like, on reality, you will be able to actually own your community, right? You'll be able to like own the connections to your community. Kind of like in a similar way to like Substack, where you get the email list and you can move on, and there's lower switching costs. And all of that helps to like mitigate that lock-in and those really kind of unconscionable terms of service that are foisted upon people by centralized platforms.
Yeah,
definitely. I think the internet was meant to be this democratizing force. In many ways, it was. But it turns out that the benefits accrue a lot more to these central points like Facebook or these social media companies than we expected, right? And so this is our chance to kind of bring back ownership and say, if you have some following, you own that following.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter which platform you choose to use.
I would say one other thing here, like the inverse is true here too, because it's like a two-sided marketplace of people that are bringing their devices to contribute compute to and they get compensated for. And then you have a competitive market of reality apps, we're calling them, that like essentially are seeking these people to host. And yes, you have like the reality apps, as you said, all the benefits of like having this crowdsourced kind of like infrastructure and like the community that comes with it because they're like aligned with your interests. But they can also like come to find out, like let's say something changes, right? Tokenomics, economic model changes in the reality app. Well, I don't have to I'm not stuck hosting your app. I can just click a button and now I'm opting into a different reality app that I'm hosting. So it's like you have the freedom and flexibility, which is I've not seen, right? Like so far, it's like everyone goes all in, like they buy the server, they buy all the stake that they need to, right? And then they're just like completely, like essentially kind of dependent on that decentralized network to be successful to the point where they'll delude themselves, right? And it's like that shouldn't work that way, right? So like you need this interoperable kind of network that allows you to opt in and out and shift your resources, your capital, like accordingly, right? So that it's a healthy market, right? Otherwise, you just end up in some weird centralized kind of like force, basically, that happens.
And another cool thing about it is that all those people who contribute their nodes to your app, suddenly like they're on your team. And they have an interest in promoting your app. Right. Whereas like AWS just doesn't give a shit about you. They just want your money. Whereas now you've got people who are invested in the long-term success of your app too.
Yeah, it's like your community are your node operators at the same time. And
your potential marketers.
And your marketers. And it's like,
else.
at the end of the day, it's all just people. And if the same community can all now participate like by mining and just doing everything, like you can start a little movement for yourself.
No, I think it's really cool. It's doubly useful, right? Providing resources and creating community.
Yeah. Well, but I mean, what is the greatest resource in crypto but community? That is true. I cornily say that all the time, but it's true. I mean, if there's somebody who believes in you and getting out there and like doing shit, it doesn't really matter. It's just you talking into a vacuum.
But I think one of the two things here, though, to make that like reality, intended, is like reducing the barriers to entry and the friction to organize that community, right? If you look just like traditional corporations, like there's a clear way of like engaging with private corporations to like participate in their community, i.e. get employed by them, right? And it's like very like, we all know the dregs of going through that process and the pain, like, so like this is like almost like a new model to like seek out, like to identify people that could contribute, whether they're developers, whether they're marketers, whether they're just providing compute or whatever. I think it's like from that perspective as well, it's kind of like a sort of like a modernization or alignment with like cyber reality that we all live in today, but we still have this kind of antiquated way of like identifying like people that make sense for your company to be successful. So this also just natively kind of like has that effect of like aligning the right resources that are attracted to what you're doing. And if you're not doing anything useful, then it's like also important that it's like almost like Darwinian kind of like mechanism where it's like, well, I don't have to fucking support you. I'm not locked into you, and like your idea is fucking stupid actually. So bye. And hopefully it doesn't fucking limp along for years, like somehow still existing and like draining resources and people's fucking emotional states, right? It's just like a quick way to like qualify and disqualify like business ideas basically as well.
It's like Chris Dixon says, like network design is destiny. And by having this ability for people, sovereign individuals, to continuously move their capital around as projects continue to form, it really creates the best projects will rise to the top. The ones with the best teams, the best visions, the best tech. Because people ultimately really just, they care about their money. They want, number go up, how do I get a return? Not everybody's in it for the tech. Go ahead.
Pumped Up fun is fun, man. It's great. Yeah. But, a lot of times we're sort of aping into things just to try and, ride the wave. And this is almost kind of like a different, almost like for our new society, a different social contract and how our platform is going to work, where like we are contributing and like running, nodes and mining tokens that we like believe in, because we want to like actually allocate capital and resources to ideas to like build a new type of society for us that's like not totally just around, flipping Bitcoin. You know what I mean? And it's fun. It's kind of gamified. And what's that Elon quote about allocating capital? Who's allocating the capital these days? You can allocate the capital now.
Well, you allocate your attention, which then allocates, that could be considered capital in and of itself, right?
Yeah.
And then the capital, it's basically like a liquid system. You're basically like liquefying things that are not, it's not just economic resources. It's
it's liquidity on attention, liquidity on compute resources, liquidity on cash. To make things, come alive. And basically just boils down to everyone's attention. Their attention on trying to run a miner, their attention on trying to, use other aspects, and that attention makes these dreams come true. Like, your vision, the focus of your attention becomes your reality. So that's kind of put your attention in here instead of the attention economy going into people are making money, like building AI bots on you to continue further distorting your reality. You can create your own actual true reality and a true society that aligns with like your values and the kind of reality that you want to live in.
Yeah, I think a big part also is just like from a pragmatic human interface perspective, like how difficult is it to participate and like do kind of the shit that we're talking about, right? Like, it's like, is it just because can your grandma participate in this, or is this exclusive to some crypto like nerdhead people that
a lot on your
some
grandma.
subset of like
You want your grandma to be happy.
Yeah.
No, I care a lot about making things as easy to use as possible. I think a lot in the crypto space, there's a lot of jargon. If you look at the documentation for many projects, it's kind of hard to follow, hard to get started. And I want to make it as easy to get started as possible. This is something I care a lot about.
Yeah, and there's different stakeholders too, right? So you want to make it easy for developers. You want to make it easier for the people that want to just contribute their node or their compute resources, which basically what we alluded to earlier is like it's just an app you download on your phone, click a couple buttons, and now you're participating in this thing, and you can swap tokens, stuff like that. So that's like the general concept from that perspective as an end user. Yeah. And then you have what else? So you got node operators, developers, and then I guess traders or people that are just kind of like wanting to just exchange value.
Yeah.
Like how does that interface look like, right? So we're like looking at all that. They're all related, actually. Yeah. One thing could like someone that is a node operator might also want to use a decentralized exchange for some reason, or the developer might want to host the node. So like enveloping that into a single interface that comprises all of those features into what we're calling a reality portal as the app, your portal into this like multi-chain kind of universe of like, how do I quickly spin up a node or how do I opt into a specific reality app to host, or like how do I exchange how do I manage my wallets right across these different chains, all these like different little features that today it's very clunky. If you look at blockchain today, it's like, I need this MetaMask extension here, and then I need this app over here, and then I have a phone app, and then, it's just like, and then I need to learn Linux now to host a node, and it's just like, it's like usually way over most people's heads unless you're just born into this stuff.
Yeah, so we're spending a lot of time making sure that we have simple, clear user interfaces for our client applications and very straightforward developer tools.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, to boil it all down, like what reality really will be from a tangible like thing for like, our users is it is like the place where every aspect of crypto, including like every token that you can think of, Bitcoin, Ethereum, whatever, you can manage and trade things into and out of other tokens that you want. You can mine stuff. It's going to have some extra, interesting things for developers. And this is basically just the one-stop shop for everything. And it has the guarantees, the really decentralized guarantees that don't exist as these different sectors of crypto exist right now because they're still kind of centralized. I mean, you don't really know. You don't really know what you're seeing on Binance is real. You know, you don't really need, you know, it takes forever to figure out how to like set up a lot of these different servers for, and in ordinary people, it's just kind of like, it's not even going to be possible unless you can do this with a one button click. So yeah, I mean, this is kind of like the best shot we have at trying to do it all in one place and get people who ordinarily wouldn't be mining, and that's the goal. And well, it's not just a goal or a vision. It's like a reality now. You guys are going to try the app soon. You're going to like it.
Yeah, we really want to make Portal a one-stop shop. Your home in crypto.
Yeah.
If you want to get into a little bit more of a tech talk.
Let's talk a little bit about TUMI. Like, how does TUMI create this shared coherence, and like, how is it so game changing as a consensus mechanism?
Well, I mean, I'll let you guys be the judge of it being game changing. I certainly like my own farts. Well, I mean, it kind of boils down to so why do I think it's game changing? So I don't know. I really like to do my thing. I try to like to solve physics problems as computer science problems because it's kind of like still doing the thing that I like to do, but building things, and also like, you know, I can get paid for it more than being a broke grad student. So yeah, I made that switch. I was really smart. Anyway, so that's why I love to do it. And so TUMI was essentially kind of almost like my meditations on what's really happening inside of a quantum computer. So if you really think about it under the hood, a quantum computer is kind of like a distributed system where the entangled quantum states are like nodes inside of a distributed system. Typically, the actual data, the protocol that sends data in between them in most arrays uses something called error correction codes, which is like how your cell phone works essentially. But what it's doing is it's sending part files, or rather it's sending local perspectives of you know, how things are actually perceived and trying to bubble them up into some kind of like a global state, which can then sort of be like executed and sort of like played out to find out what's actually going to happen. I don't know if anybody's like a real quantum information theorist out there can probably just kick me in the balls, but like he doesn't know what he's talking about. But I don't know. Unfortunately, probably know a bit more than I should know about what I'm talking about. Anyway, regardless, the whole thing about TUMI is really like a reformulation of a distributed system trying to come together around a like global state from local perspectives of that state. And it's called a meme because essentially like we do this all the time, even in our real life, when we share memes or concepts and stuff with people, inside jokes, everything is sort of self-referential. Everything is sort of like self-referential in how it's defined from some sort of like starting experience to like what we are now and to like where we go in the future, right? I mean, I don't know, you could look at Richard Dawkins and look at his meme stuff, but I mean, concepts in society self-replicate the same way that they do, or like genes replicate, right? So just to tie this whole thing back in, like what is TUMI? What is actually going on here with TUMI? So the concept with TUMI kind of comes from how we design a superconductor, really. As much as I conceptually think about it with like the word coherence, and that's why I talked about quantum information theory, because that's all about like coherence. And the math actually does sort of like use, you know, Hilbert spaces and stuff. At its core, it is really like a fundamental thing around superconductors, which is like you can optimize or manipulate the local microstates in order to create a global macrostate with certain properties. And that's how we do stuff around like superconductors. So obviously like you can just cool down a piece of metal and it will become a superconductor, but you can do other really fancy stuff like make semiconductors, you know, doping, or, you know, just materials that have certain properties based upon their local molecular configurations. Which do amount to like a semiconductor at room temperature, right? And so basically at its core, that's what this algorithm is doing. Locally, it's trying to optimize to create as much information as possible and thus create as much local relative entropy as possible. But at the global state, it's trying to minimize entropy from like a global perspective, and that global perspective being like the commensurate sum of all the local states. And that kind of difference, that delta between the macro and the micro, is where we can actually do things where we like optimize properties like electron flow, or in our case, like data flow through our network. I could ramble on about it a bit more, but it's really special. And I think that there's something to do with it, with this kind of thing called fractional calculus, which is has to do with mixing differentiation and integration at the same time, and basically doing calculus on networks. And so there's a really cool, like, without sparing the details, I really think that reformulating our understanding of dynamical systems using these new types of operators is going to like allow us to break down problems using networks in a way that we really haven't done before in fields like things like chaos theory and you know, like ergodic systems, which is really like what a distributed system or any kind of like, you know, I don't know, like an engine or just some type of tool eventually breaks down, right? You want to figure out how can we like make a system that's going to like keep its bearings and not totally like break or overheat or do something, right? So anyway, that's why I like it. And I've also sort of been chipping away at this problem for like 7 or 8 years at this point, and I kind of just had this like sick epiphany like a year ago, and it was really great to have that, and I like doing that. It's kind of like why I do this shit. So I get that local little ego trip in my room, and I'm like, God damn it, yeah, that is what that is. Ooh. But yeah, I don't know.
Keep it in.
So like from the principles, like what you would describe is like the principles which like you've essentially ingrained into the TUMI consensus algorithm, right? Like how you arrived at those things.
Yeah.
From like more of like a strict like implementation. Some people like to hear like that part of the. I mean, you have a white paper that outlines all of this, but like if you were to summarize like the white paper like quickly, like on like the TUMI white paper, like specifically how are like nodes like scores calculated, and that stuff that kind of goes into the mechanics of the consensus algorithm.
Yeah, absolutely. So essentially what's happening is that nodes are determining something called a node influence metric. I always forget if it's a metric or a measure, and in computer science they're kind of loose with the term. The difference has to do with something called the triangle inequality and calculating stuff, but bottom line here is that it works. Anyway, and so what it does is it basically calculates a probability distribution of all the different nodes' chance of doing something kind of fishy versus, just sort of going with the flow of how data flow is going through the network. So sometimes like when weather, hits, a server or something can go offline. Things happen, right? We need to figure out whether or not somebody's actually trying to attack our network or if something organic is happening. And so by calculating this probability distribution, we can basically use that in order to pass through, we calculate the probability distribution of a node being like a Sybil node or like trying to perform an attack or not by looking at the local relative information gain of every other node in terms of its node influence, right? If there's outliers, then we do something called like a graph cut problem. It's actually just kind of like solving a differential equation, really. It's like I only take the first 3 higher order terms, but with just those 3 higher order terms, I was able to write a model that could identify nodes under every Sybil attack I could think of, up to 80% within a particular consensus round, which is pretty wild. And it just goes to show that like consensus is like, I think that consensus is a solved problem. We just haven't figured out which one of the solved problems is associated to it. And so the same way that we try to figure out signal processing through like wires, talking about that quantum information thing, we can essentially try to analyze signal through a consensus process the same way we look at like a wave through a wire, and then sort of figure out whether the signal is corrupted or not. And that's really what it is at the whole. Actually, if I were to give you one sentence, what's really cool about TUMI is that it's a digital representation of how we use analog signals and information. So we can basically like use the principles from the analog world in the digital world now, which is really cool.
Yeah.
It's called a day convolution, and it's essentially like a digital or like a discrete representation of a Fourier transform, which is, pretty much like probably 80% of what you do in physics. Yeah.
So then like essentially once so basically the network is kind of like autonomously self-reflecting on its behavior of all the different nodes that make up the network, right? And then like if there's an outlier or anomalous behavior, TUMI automatically identifies that, and then also kind of makes a distinction of whether or not it's like explicitly malicious or maybe a benign kind of issue, like power went out or something like that, and your node's down for a little bit. Like essentially.
Yeah, exactly. Is this like a benign behavioral thing, or is somebody actually trying to perform an attack on our network? Which, like, I'm sure everybody watching this probably realizes like what a blockchain is all about. So we're just gonna skip past. that. But to also use the Fourier transform analogy, I mean, basically imagine if all the different nodes are contributing like small part waves, and then the total sum of those waves represents the actual signal going through a wire. If there's a couple of those part waves that are just kind of totally dissonant and like, you know, pulling away from the shape that are necessary from like the information that you want in your global wave, you can basically turn those guys off and then improve the fidelity of the information being passed through the analog signal. Yeah, and also like there's a new article too that, you know, it definitely will not change beyond that much. And I sort of use an analogy about like how people playing instruments in like an orchestra or something is a great example of this. And so like when somebody's like playing a stringed instrument, especially if you don't have frets, you have to use something called intonation, which is just sort of like you figuring out like the note you're playing, you know, relative to the global one, and then you have to sort of like capitulate to the actual total chord. And that's basically what the system is doing at any given time. It's trying to look for dissonance and try to recohere it towards like a harmonious signal. And that harmonious signal is the signal with the highest fidelity. And the signal with the highest fidelity in our case is just the best like transactions per second that we can process through it. All right.
Wow.
Super cool. This might be worthwhile going down or not, but to further expand like TUMI's role, like is it only within Reality Network itself, or do the Reality apps also leverage this same security that, you know?
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
So we have a blockchain in a box, you know, wheel and spoke type model, and although it really is just its own kind of network of independent networks, each independent network that you can create throughout the wrap creation process or the wrap writing process. Need like a hat or something. Anyway, yeah, I mean, all this stuff is baked in. Basically, you just clone our actual network, and then you can add extra features and functionality on top of it that you want specifically for whatever type of application or company or thing that you want to build. So you can really think about this network, this sort of cluster that you will have for your app as being your actual platform for your app. I mean, this is your platform, and you get to use TUMI in order to, you know, collect your community to become the actual people who host your thing. And yeah, that's it. So everybody gets to benefit.
And you can do like custom consensus.
Yeah, exactly.
So like it's like you've got creative freedom in a way that you don't
Yeah.
with any other blockchain system.
Exactly. Yeah, and it's also worth mentioning too that in terms of the creative freedom, we have a new set of features that a lot of people have been chipping away at in the background in crypto, but people are sort of moving away from smart contracts. I will say that we can support people's contracts as well, but people are trying to figure out ways to verify Turing complete code. The most easiest and simplest way is with ZK proofs, and we have a platform specifically inside of our nodes that you can, here's the words, transpile or compile to WASM, which is a sort of a universal way of executing, you know, application binaries. But we have a way that implicitly outputs ZK proofs for specific Turing complete code. So like you're not limited to like what you can do in Solidity anymore. Like you can take a machine learning model that tries to figure something out that's really important, and you can tokenize it and host it on these nodes. I mean, like, this is like a fundamental cybersecurity problem that's like really only for the first time in history starting to get solved, and we are the first people to actually have a functioning product where people can use this and do this. So that's a really, really big deal. And I think when we start to really compare ourselves with like Ethereum and other dApp platforms, I mean, yeah, we've got the bells and whistles in our consensus, and I mean, that's my shit, I fucking love it, but like, in reality, like it's going to be the ability to tokenize Web 2 applications and host them on your own community-driven, decentralized platform. That's really going to make us become the next, like, we're going to have an ICO boom that made 2018 kind of, you know, look like the old days. That's what we're trying to do, man. I mean,
Yeah, it's like trying to, like, I think that the industry tries to, or attempts to describe that as decentralized physical infrastructure.
Yeah, DeepIn.
Yeah, DeepIn, but I don't think it's fully, the definition has not been articulated in that way, in my opinion, because I don't think anyone understands that level of, like, at least there's no consensus on that definition, I would say. But that, I would imagine that would be the if you wanted to, like, verify and like be able to trust someone to host your application that you don't know, right? Like there's fundamental cybersecurity problems that need to be solved here.
Yeah.
The reality check is what
reality check.
Yeah, that's what
Yeah,
we're calling it, right? But like that's the consensus and the reality checks like essentially allows for that and allows you the flexibility to, you know, validate off-chain physical infrastructure and host your apps.
You know, I think White did a great job delineating the difference between what we're aiming for and smart contracts, right? Smart contracts are great. They help you kind of with asset movement, but we are trying to support more full applications. Applications that can do a lot more.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
It's really kind of like just the dream of what everybody wanted in crypto in 2018 when we all kind of came together and were like, oh my God, we're all going to launch our apps and do this decentralized future and stuff. And they were like, well, we just got to do this on top, or maybe we need to make this L2, or like Lightning will fix that. And it's just like fundamentally, like I really think that what DPIN is just like, it is the fulfillment of the dream that brought us all to crypto like 5-10 years ago, you know, the OG days. It's like, let's get back to basics and like do what we were really here and meant to do.
Yeah.
Agreed.
Great. How do you see reality's approach affecting cultural norms and society at large? Like, where does this all go?
You guys gotta start
Governance.
that. You gotta start that.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, it ties back into what we said before about like the fact that we essentially exist in a world where there are people who claim to definitively know the truth or facts or science, and it turns out that they're mostly full of shit. And so I think that's the honest truth of our situation, and we need to figure out a way where the truth can be, you know, different perspectives can be reconciled, and like that the market can kind of really, the market for ideas can really select the best ideas. And I think truth is like the kind of at the top of a hierarchy of values, right? You know, because any value that you have has to be kind of true in order for it to be valid. So everything else is downstream of that, right? Like actually being able to form pictures of the world that are richer and more representative of the diversity and variation in the world. And being able to then self-organize around these ideas or these takes. Like this touches on Balaji's network state, like this idea that you have the one commandment that people will form like societies around. I don't find that fully persuasive, right? Because he's talking about where we're going to have like a vegan society where like veganism is our number one value. It's like, well, that kind of sounds crap. Like even for vegans, right? It's like societies aren't monolithic like in that way, right? They're diverse, and that's what makes them interesting, you know, and that's what enables like innovation, these conflicting perspectives. So we need to have a way where like you can represent all of this richness in a way that's verifiable. And that's what reality does, right? Because all these different data types, they can be anything, right? They can be, you know, any, whether it's social media content, whether it's code, whether it's music, whether it's art. And these kind of things can be, you know, hosted in a way that people can organize themselves around them, right? Configure their own societies around them, and not just in this monolithic way.
Yeah.
And I think it adds an element of skin in the game to online communities, which should strengthen their bond.
Also, we're going to start a revolution.
Cut that.
Also, we're going to start a revolution.
I mean, I guess we could like continue because what you described is like the conditions that what you're gonna
talk about. We talked about last night. The governance.
Yeah, well, that's what I was about to say. So basically, like what Ryan just outlined, in my opinion, is like the minimum conditions to then establish some sort of formalized, like organized government system where you're coordinating like between people. Like
being able to automate actions, like that's fundamentally what smart contracts are. It's just modus ponens, if-then statements that execute upon the fulfillment of certain conditions, which are typically input by like oracles. So it's like you can look at it as an augmentation of the human will, right? Where it's like you can code something that executes a series of steps upon the fulfillment of certain conditions, right? So there's loads of examples you can come up with for that. Like maybe there's certain funds that are put in escrow and they're only dispersed if certain conditions are fulfilled. Like maybe you live in a community that has like some kind of say there's a drought in your community. And normally you source all your crops from like the local like farm or whatever, but there's been a drought, so you need to have a fail-safe where you're going to get those crops from somewhere else, like get them shipped in. And it's like you could have a collective insurance policy against like that kind of situation. But I mean, your imagination is kind of the limit with the complexity that's possible in reality. Like you can really code all sorts of different types of things to coordinate all types of different actions. Like I really think that there's this like adage that people say code is law. And I always really liked it, but I felt that it was kind of empty, like that people didn't really substantiate it very well. I studied like legal philosophy for many years, and really all the law is a coordination mechanism. And there's a lot of pomp and ceremony that tries to paper over the fact that there is nothing very unique about the laws, the types of reasons that law provides us with, right? They pretend, right, that the legal systems pretend that they're special, but really their utility is that they enable people to coordinate themselves, choose which side of the road to drive on, right? That's a collective action problem that like individuals, even very clever individuals, won't be able to make from a local vantage point. So you need some kind of like coordination mechanism that transcends and kind of finds that solution for people. And I think that's what reality is doing, right? Reality is actually providing a coordination mechanism that's scalable and tractable and can be applied to all sorts of different things. Where it really is different from like typical legal systems and societies is that they are very univocal and they tend towards authoritarianism, right? Because they're centralized, because they're all about the monopolization of violence and inflicting force upon people. So that's a downside in and of itself, but they're also just like this univocal, like there's one set of laws for all of the people here and they must comply under pain of punishment. What we really want, though, is a kind of like looser coupling of society, where there's more space for people to individuate and grow and evolve in accordance with their own view of themselves and their potential. And I think most people in the world today feel like they're being trammeled, right? They feel the press of the state and its bureaucracy upon them. And I think that isn't just in our imagination. I think that there is a stifling of human potential. And the way that we can resolve that is by relaxing the constraints upon society and enabling people to associate in a freer way and coordinate using a mechanism like reality. And that'll be my view.
That was so good. And also, you know what, my hippie bullshit coming out here, but like being able to live your authentic self, man. I mean, when I was talking about why did this all start, hated being a grunt. And, magical shit just comes out when everybody gets to be their authentic self. And like, I kind of think that's like the real magic that's going to come out of this thing, like whether it's even just defining your own local like values and views with your community, like our voting mechanism that we're talking about, which like, it's even really hard to describe. I mean, like, how can we just come up with views and values amongst the community implicitly? And I mean, that's literally just a way of codifying one's authenticity and then basically opening up doors to meet other authentic people and let the magic flow, man.
Well, yeah, I mean, the part there that both of you touched on is like, which I always just personally thought was the problem, like up to this point, is that you can't actually scale these coordination systems in any fucking meaningful way, and it just ends up being conflicts, right?
Dude, totally.
And like, so it's like, how do I know how you arrived at the decisions you arrived in, and who are the constituents that like participated in that determination, right? Like right now, it's kind of this nebulous, sham of a fucking political system that we participate in, right? So it's like, if you can actually see the provenance of decisions that are being made, and even like these automations, like these smart contracts, whatever you want to call them, that execute, like if you have all this like provable, verifiable, observable information within a cyber secure layer of society,
Yeah.
then like you can coordinate in the local, can coordinate in the macro,
Yeah.
between nations.
Yeah.
Over time, if, people have to
Yeah.
adopt this technology in a
Yeah.
way that's standardized, basically. But
Yeah, it's so funny because like one of the big fictions of legal systems is that like people know the law, but no one does.
No,
Like,
knows the
who the
law.
fuck knows any of the laws, like, or any of the statutes? So it's like, and like even to find the law that would apply to you, right, is like quite a like nebulous thing as well. But like with like a public permissionless ledger that like has everything on record and is auditable, like it completely like fixes that, you know.
Yeah.
More so also taking the human element out of the arbitration.
Yeah.
That's a big deal. Like, you ever think about, like, it's just some dude with a lot of opinions who's,
Or God told him. If you're in a theocracy, right? People live in a theocracy.
Yeah, I think there's some study that says that judges, right before lunch, when
Yeah.
they're hungry, they offer harsher sentences.
you think we
Yeah,
like
agree,
do
the
something
hangry
about
sentence.
this. You know what I mean? Like a hanger-based society, dude. We are a hanger-based society, and we are hungry for some authenticity.
It's amazing.
Anyway, yeah, it's like, yeah, man. Sorry, I don't want to cut you off, but man, I was just like, that's literally it. It's like removing the human fallibility from allowing our values to be arbitrated or like take form amongst the social cohesion that, represents our relationship with society. And, it's like, this is almost like a new juxtaposition for self and society. And I like that phrase because the word juxtaposition means like it's where do we sit relative to it. And this is almost like a new focal reference point, a new fulcrum, if you will, in the balance between self and society. And it's almost a little bit, it's almost like the manifestation of so many concepts that people have thought of in kind of a metaphysical or like idealization of what the world could be, but like through this technology it can manifest and become incarnate. Like we haven't really like locked down what we're going to call these arbiters. Maybe we'll call it arbiters, like the Arbiter, my favorite video game. But you're kind of like egregores, man. I mean, they're literally manifestations of some will to then do a task for you. For anyone who's been, like whatever. But it's really cool. I mean, it really is just like the incarnation of imagination through this coordination.
Well, it also segues directly into a hot topic that you hear thrown around a lot, which is like artificial intelligent agents,
Yeah.
right? Which is something that's being developed, right? So you need like to be able to like verify and like essentially like create guardrails around these things, because now it's not just executing some simplistic swap this token for this token. It's like literally going to do some sort of complex task for you that you're just like hoping it's going to do it right? So how do you have the guardrails there to ensure that it accomplishes?
Do we have a question about AI bots?
Now we do.
Hell yeah.
What's the deal with AI bots? How do we separate
Great
AI
question.
bots? Yeah, great question. From human-centered truth, right? Like even if we talk about voting on chain and a brand new social contract, which is like all the idealization over the last few hundred years of what democracy could be, and now like look where we're at. Like the limitations have taken us to here, and now technology as the rails and reality as this base layer of what's possible. But now we have new challenges with the AI bots and like what's real, what isn't. Is this human?
Who is real?
Who is real and who isn't?
It's like identity is really the big question. And authenticating identity.
Yeah, I mean, like, because AI is such a black box, and I think because of its massive scaling, like its ability to scale and apply itself to like everything, it's very important that we can like audit what is going into that, right? And like be sure that the source of truth that it's getting is like a real source of truth and not just some bullshit propaganda that's being fed in there or something that's extremely biased. So I think like with us, we can do that, right? We can provide computational like provenance over the training, which is something pretty unique that I think most other Most other platforms can't do.
Dude, yes, provenance over training. It probably is a new word, but nailed it. And I mean, this really gets back to the tokenizing a Web 2 app. You can't put an agent or an LLM in a smart contract. You know what I mean? Like that's like beyond, imaginable. But with this new like WASM thing that we've got, like you can actually like tokenize this new automated world that we're entering in. It's like in a lot of ways this is kind of like what SingularityNet was trying to do.
I think you also, going forward, we'll have more agents interact with applications, and the micropayments that crypto makes possible. That's perfect for this.
Yeah. Very good point.
It's also worth mentioning too, which is just kind of a heady thought, which is like if these agents are actually like arbitrating stuff and doing things for you, like couldn't they also like be a part of like this concept of like reality and this shared experience that we all have as we like vote for things for this network or like run nodes and God forbid choose the fork that we want our network to have. I mean, it's almost like really oracleizing some kind of it's like oracleizing this like other perspective that's like maybe not 100% human, but like could have been created to have a purpose to just be wholly just that. Rather than have the full human experience. And I think that's kind of like an interesting perspective to just add to it, like an extra spice to the sauce. But yeah, I don't know. I'm not really afraid of AI as much as most people. I probably should be. And I think that it's going to be a lot of fun how these tokenized AIs, we get to interact with them and, trade with them. We get to experience them through this network, in like tangible way that makes a physical representation with our world at the very least around the money part. And who knows from then on.
What are like some cool ideas? What are some cool ideas that you guys think could be built on reality that the world hasn't seen yet?
Or what's being built on?
Or what's being built on reality?
This is funny for a lot of different levels that you guys won't really get. We'll probably forget about if we ever watch this. Coolest thing. Well, I mean, first off, the revolution. Like literally, we haven't marketed ourselves as this, but like in a lot of ways, this is kind of like the infrastructure for a breakaway society. I mean, obviously we can give some more tangible examples in 2 seconds, but like with our governance mechanism and the ability to host votes for different groups of people, latitude and longitudinally like connected, like geolocated, to find values around that, to honestly have direct democratic vote for policies, code changes that people want, to change economic policy, to host your own economic system, to, I mean, everything in a box that can't really be manipulated with like a human ego. I mean, this is kind of like, it's pretty wild. I mean, this is so much more than just like a token. That I think eventually this is going to be the beginning of the end of like the nation state. I mean, obviously I'm gonna let Brian talk about the nation, but dude, this is the beginning of the end, and I think that slowly everybody is just gonna stop paying attention to the way that our current systems work, focus their attention on this new reality, and then let the vision of what they want and their own localist, kind of organization, to find their people and their place, and just sort of forget about having to fight against the current and live in a world where we can just sort of flow with the shit that works for us. Whatever. I'm such a goddamn hippie.
Yeah.
All right, Brian, tell us more.
Real down to earth shit.
Down to earth shit. No, I'm kidding.
Yeah.
Well, realistically, like,
I'm
what's the coolest? Well, it's also worth mentioning too that like there are certain industries that are prone to straight up fraud that like can put all their shit on chain with us and like not be subject to that fraud. There's I think the biggest sports industry in the entire history of humankind is about to blow up in like esports, and like people still get their bounties stolen. People still cheat and they get away with it in like league games. I mean, like remember like Deflategate with like, and I don't even watch football, but like I know about that, right? That was like a big deal. Like this shit happens every other Tuesday. Like, and just by creating a platform that's not prone to straight up fraud, like an entire esports industry is now going to be like, instead of being on like 3 a.m. on ESPN2, like they're going to be competing with, Sunday night primetime football, I think, is when that's on, right?
Don't ask me.
Don't ask me.
Yeah, so
Go
Cyberleap is one product building on Reality, and what they do essentially, you have a desktop application, you opt in, and they collect some mouse movements. What they're trying to do is train a model to detect sort of anomalous mouse movement, right? Because especially in FPS games, there's a lot of people cheating, right? And so with their community, they'll have other things, they'll run tournaments as well, but as a community, they can train these models that help take out cheaters.
Yeah, very cool. What about also the element here around self-sovereignty, around the power of the individual through the lens of community? I think that through the lens of democracy, we're programmed to believe that our vote counts and our vote matters, which is open for contention, whether that's true or not, and maybe in some specific places it is, and it isn't. But through the lens of, this is my device, I'm sharing my compute power, now I have a say in the network. Not only am I receiving rewards and I'm earning money and tokens for what I'm sharing, but hey, you know what? I don't agree with this this direction that this rap or this my community is going in. How much power do I have? Currently in crypto, most of the power just it's copy paste capitalism. The ones with the most power are the ones with the most money, the most wealth, or which is proof of stake, or the ones with the proof of work, the ones who can pay for the most expensive mining rigs. I mean, the balance of power is not really for the little guy or for the regular person. So with our network design, how does it benefit self-sovereignty and autonomy for communities to really find their individual voices collectively outside of just like what has been invented, which is just DAOs and such?
Yeah, so you were asking about self-sovereignty, right? And self-sovereignty is a word that's like bandied around in a rhetorical fashion a lot, but like very few people, actually no one has really provided a really good definition of it that gives it substance. And I think like the way to think about it is that most of the time where you are dependent in a critical fashion on a third party, you are not sovereign because they have all the leverage over you, right? If it's a critical dependency, then you need them more than they need you. And in the context of like tech and the internet, right? This is just the concept of like platform lock-in, right? Where people go and they build on some platform and they essentially build up a big audience and then they get screwed over by that platform. Chris Dixon calls it the attract-extract methodology, right? A good example of who this happened to was like Vine with Twitter. And Vine basically had this wonderful platform. It was the launchpad for so many creators, like big YouTubers like Logan Paul, Jake Paul, etc. And basically they were rugged by Twitter, and they lost all their momentum and basically everything that they had created. And the problem with centralized platforms is that with this lock-in, you basically have this critical dependency on the platform, and the switching costs are huge. And so what we really need is a protocol network, right? Where people can have confidence that the backbone of the network is not going to be changed arbitrarily, so that they can, invest the time and the money and the effort into building something and not have this perpetual fear of being rugged. And that's what realitynet is, right? It's this immutable base layer that anyone can build upon and have this confidence that it's evergreen, right? And also you can obviously customize all your shit to whatever you need depending upon what kind of application is. And like, I think that, this is something that I would hope that we can do in the future, is like all of these companies that have been screwed over by the tech oligopoly, right, now have a home, right? It's like there's the potential for a comeback where they can go and they can build on their own terms and where they can actually reward creators properly, right? Like right now, most of the platforms completely gouge their creators. They take, like YouTube is okay, I think it gives the creators like 45%, but that's the best. Like most of the other platforms give only a small sliver of the revenue to the creators. And so what we want to do is basically create a place where creators actually have leverage and they can actually get properly compensated for all of their work. And so, yeah, like we welcome anyone who wants to come build on Reality, particularly anyone that's been deplatformed in the past. Like, this is the place for you, right? Like, you can get rewarded properly for your content. You can have confidence that this network is going to be there in perpetuity. And basically that you will get your just desserts.
One of the things I want to bring up is that DePIN is such a buzzword in crypto today. The narratives shift as time goes, but why would Reality be the natural fit, natural place for a DePIN project to flourish?
It's because we are the base layer like L0 for DePIN. No, so the real ethos behind DePIN is sort of coming back to the original promise of what blockchain was meant to do, which was to actually like decentralize these centralized aspects of our lives, and specifically the physical, you know, stuff we interact with every day. So like we think about like cars, we think about like our, you know, IoT type of visions and whatnot. Like none of this stuff has really popped off because like everything is, if you wanted to try and use a blockchain in order to create this kind of interactive world, you have to pass all of the information throughout the entire distributed centralized network through one central point and one central consensus process, and it just doesn't work. And even if you could make an argument about L2s being good enough for the existing blockchains out there, you can't do it for, you know, the whole kind of like interconnected, you know, vision dream that people want. That's why people have come together in this DePIN type of moniker. And what DePIN has really sort of has done, and what I love, is that it's brought back to the center focal point that like decentralization means that you need to connect everything on a device level rather than through like one, you know, branded decentralized centralized process. And so people are asking from a fundamental feature standpoint for the types of products that, I mean, we've believed in for a long time. And so it's really great to sort of see people talking about the same kind of thing, which is we want to find a way to use consensus as a whole as like its own, like every consensus process becoming its own product per se. Like the product is your consensus, and the output of consensus is the orchestration or coordination of the infrastructure and, you know, thus the platform that your application, your company, your whole thing runs on. Yeah.
Let's talk a little bit about the interoperability piece here. Like interoperability in crypto is like, you know, people think like, oh, there's a third-party bridge connecting Ethereum to Solana.
Yeah.
Now we have interoperability. Like, how different is that from what we're building at a native level, at the L0 level, at the base layer?
I don't want to hog this, but I want to take it back to DePIN real quick, because DePIN is about interoperability. It's the fact that we have all these disparate like subnets around us that aren't interoperable, and blockchains were meant to interoperate things by allowing us to use some source of truth to coordinate these disparate subsets and disparate subnets and systems we have out there. But yeah, I mean, the real TLDR too is that like interoperability and like some type of way for consensus itself to communicate is a requirement in order to actually remove all centralized aspects of crypto. And what do I mean by that? I mean exchanges and centralized exchanges in general. Like if you want to move tokens and value and like your interest from one like ledger to another, you have to take it from decentralized land and put it into centralized land. If you even want two different blockchains to talk to one another, you typically have to rely upon a centralized oracle. This is like completely antithetical, and like, you know, we need to be putting more focus on this in the total industry as a whole, which is why we care about it. And I'm going to tell you guys more about how we're cooking it in a second. You go.
Yeah, I would add to that, like, it's nuts to me that we are, how many years, like 15 years into blockchain and DLT or thereabouts, and like we still don't really have a definition of decentralization. And it's like it's like it's a predicate seeking a subject. It's like decentralize what? What are you talking about? And I think that the failure to define this has led to a backsliding towards centralization, where we have all of these bottlenecks that are essentially centralized things that are branded as decentralized. So it's like if you have like these mining pools that are doing most of the consensus on Bitcoin and Ethereum, it's like, well, that doesn't sound very decentralized to me. And so I think like what we're doing is we're taking decentralization to like its apotheosis. Like it's like in every conceivable way we are decentralizing it, decentralizing the stack, the servers, like the devices. Like that's kind of what lowering the barriers to entry for enabling deep-in devices with like which are like off-the-shelf consumer hardware to participate. That's what that's about too, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's like another word that might complement decentralization is heterogeneous, or like hardware agnostic, or agnosticism, right? Like where it's like, because that's the other thing. You're like a lot of, it's hard, like where it's easy to have an oversight on that aspect, but like that feature ends up vertically integrated, and now you have these dependencies that are vertically integrated. Like, oh, this blockchain supports this specific hardware, which can execute these specific types of smart contracts, and it's like all just like it doesn't fulfill the vision of deep-in, right? It's just like a unique specific use case, which I don't want to like hate on that if those exist, but it's just like not the basically the interoperability vision that's
like
required.
I think I wrote about this before somewhere, but it's like a really good, I mean, it's nuts that like we are all in the process of building networks, and like the best example of how this worked in the past, the only example that really achieved mass adoption was the internet. But it feels like most projects like haven't really examined the internet closely to see like how it emerged. And what we've just been discussing really closely mirrors the emergence of the internet, which is that you had these different university campuses in the United States that all had their local intranets, and they were trying to get these to all communicate, and DARPANET was involved as well. And essentially the TCP/IP protocol did that by enabling all of the different packets to be passable between all these different intranets. So each intranet could understand like the packets from another network. And I think the analog with reality is like data types, where it's like we're essentially enabling all of, like we're basically decentralizing at the packet level. So you can pass packets regardless of hardware, like the decentralization goes all the way up the stack, but really we're enabling it in the most, to the most indivisible unit possible, which is data.
Yeah, that's like spot on.
I kind of wanted to say something about, Brian mentioned just a moment ago, this idea of these protocol networks. And so in that book by Chris Dixon, Read, Write, Own, very good book, everybody should read it. He talks about the attract and extract cycle. So basically, the core idea here is that the structure of the network determines the outcomes. And so for all of these platforms like YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, etc., what happens is at first they offer terms that are very amenable to these creators, right, to attract them to the network. But at the end of the day, they end up extracting all the value they can. So maybe to begin with, your content just naturally was favored by the algorithm. But then later on, you have to buy ad services from this company, right? We see this as well with Amazon, where sellers who use their services are boosted, and it's kind of a subject of investigation at the moment, right? And so this, Chris Dixon is kind of careful to say he doesn't blame these companies. This is just kind of the structure will always end in this way. And so what we're offering here is a protocol that says, hey, that cannot happen. The structure of our system does not allow this to happen.
Yeah. Why does interoperability matter for businesses?
Because loads of businesses have like computers, devices, and data that they are not leveraging to get revenue, right? It's like we have all of these resources that are literally all around us, and they're a source of revenue for businesses that is not being tapped at the moment. And we have some really interesting use cases in the pipeline for reality, where like users, like businesses, we won't go into the specifics of who these businesses are, but they can actually harvest data and sell it through an IoT data marketplace. And like that's a whole new source of revenue. It's for a lot of businesses, it's going to be decorrelated from their other revenue sources. So it's like you mitigate risk in that way if you have another revenue stream. But also, like, if you do have hardware in your business, like now you have a way of generating revenue from that too by sharing the compute with the network. So, it's like this really interesting new kind of way for businesses to earn money.
Yeah, and I think also the definition of interoperability tends to be interpreted under the prevailing definition, which is very cryptocurrency centric.
Yeah.
So like most people are like, oh, interoperability, this blockchain talks to this blockchain. It's like, no, it's not what we're fucking talking about here. We're like talking about interoperability with the fucking devices or the data or the systems or your tech stack that you used on your day-to-day business operation.
Yeah.
Being able to interoperate those systems to either host the applications and provide compute to the network, or port in the data that they're generating, and then tokenizing it, and then enabling these different use cases, or even rewarding people to host the network with the tokenized data. Like, there's so many different possibilities and permutations to how that can unfold. So it's, but that's what interoperability is, like flexibility to be able to integrate your system and your business into the network.
On that point, like that we see this, a lot of success of crypto companies now are like Polymarket. They don't even have a coin, but they're wildly successful. So do you see a place for reality hosting businesses that aren't necessarily interested in tokenization, but that would still get access to the tech that we're offering, which is this interoperability of data? Like, there's a whole other segment here that could be served outside of traditional crypto of decentralizing ownership.
Yeah. I mean, I think there's, I think it just depends on your business objectives, really. Like, you don't need to create a token to use the network and benefit from just crowdsourcing.
Right.
Like, you could have this like hybrid situation where it's like you directly pay the person in fiat currency, right, to host the network, but you get the security guarantees of the technologies, Reality Network stack to facilitate that and enable that. So that's one example that potentially could, and then like eventually, probably they'd want to have more liquidity in that. So they'll like, instead of USD, it'll be USDT or USDC, some stable coin or something, right?
Or fiat.
Or fiat, yeah.
Yeah.
On DLT.
This also talks to the idea of like, yes, interoperability is much far greater than just like, taking one blockchain's native coin and switching it with another one's. There's far bigger.
Even the developer experience too. So separate what I talked about with business operations, basically, and then you have like developer experience, and why I mentioned it earlier, like being able to like essentially tokenize your existing application by using developer tools that we provide to transpile that code into something that's provable on chain.
Right. Because we use WASM, you can use whatever language you're comfortable with. Not whatever language, but many languages.
Yeah.
Right. Can you describe what WASM is for those who
WebAssembly virtual machine?
Yeah, WebAssembly is a compile target. And so many popular languages like Golang or Rust, they can compile to WASM. This means that you can take your application as it already exists, you can compile it to WASM, and you can use it within our system.
Really cool. There's also, within crypto, the interoperability piece, like there's this idea that if people might think, oh, since we're a base layer, we need people to mint their token on our network, which is not true. They could stay whatever blockchain they're on, and they could just use pieces of our technology, of our tech stack, as it serves them.
Totally. I think we are a fan of this pick and choose approach. We don't want to lock you in anywhere.
Yeah, and if you already have liquidity, and at least right now, centralized exchanges dominate liquidity. So like that's either ERC20, right, or maybe some Sol tokens or whatever. But basically, that's kind of what you're dealt the hand with right now as a business. So it's like, oh, I don't want to have to port over all this shit and create some reality token, right? It's like, no. Well, you could do that if you want. You can actually have both.
Right.
Leave all the liquidity you already have currently. Maybe split the supply if you want, or something across into a new token if you want to do that, or just leave everything ERC20, and then just have different logic, different consensus, custom consensus algorithms that you define to facilitate the business logic, or host your application, and then it's just querying the Ethereum chain for the state for that token, right? And then you can use, and you mentioned this question earlier, which we kind of sidetracked, but then it's like, okay, that occurs, and it's like, how do I swap those? How do I move that token between different participants that are using the reality network while still leaving it on the Ethereum network? And that's when you start talking about our like solution for essentially it's like a decentralized open order book mechanism that allows you to basically do direct atomic swaps between heterogeneous blockchains, right? Whether that the reality, like you can think of the reality application or wrap itself as its own blockchain, right? So you can exchange tokens between these different reality apps using this like decentralized open order book, or you can actually interface existing blockchains that Bitcoin or other foreign blockchains, and interface them into reality and access and understand the state updates on those.
How is what we have with our decentralized order book different than an AMM model, which is what people might be familiar with?
No, somebody else should talk because I'm not diplomatic with my AMM.
Say your piece and we'll edit out the profanity.
Yeah, there you go.
You know what, AMMs, I appreciate the creativity and I think that it is a workable solution right now, but essentially like what it does is it tries to create some type of an escrow mechanism which uses a really shoddy just kind of approximate way at making sure that it's going to have enough funds to make the swap. And what's really cool about ours is that it removes the possibility of like failure on like a systemic, like this whole liquidity pool could fail type level, and honestly just puts the onus and responsibility and freedom to the individual people who are trying to swap themselves. And that was a really long-winded way of saying that like with AMMs you basically have to rely upon the implementation of somebody's like liquidity pool logic in order to do the escrow necessary to swap tokens. For us, you just actually treat our network as though it's the order book to an exchange. Individuals are matched directly between their respective ledgers, and on a statewise, or rather on a stepwise fashion, each individual thing necessary to directly do an OTC transfer happens implicitly through our network. Back to first principles and connecting people to essentially do an OTC deal with that level of fidelity, only directly on a decentralized network. And so that was more so about why we're better than an AMM versus AMMs.
That's pretty.
I like
We'll use it. Well, if you can't use it.
That was excellent.
One thing, Dad, is that it is any to any, right? So it's like universal swaps, and all we need is basically to tie in whatever blockchain these tokens are on, and suddenly those tokens are all connected to all the other tokens in the network.
But they don't have to be wrapped or shipped.
They don't have to be wrapped, So
Yeah.
it's like atomic.
Yeah,
atomic
exactly.
swaps.
It's truly atomic. And
truly
like right now,
atomic.
there's all these problems within crypto, which if you idle Bitcoin, but Bitcoin just sits around. The only way to really use it with these DeFi protocols is to have them do the custody, and then they give you wrapped Bitcoin, and it's like there are all these workarounds and subchains, and they're all just like patches on a problem that has never really been solved before.
Yeah.
And so to be able to do a truly atomic cross-chain swaps without a liquidity pool, like that doesn't exist in the
never been
space.
done.
Nobody's ever done it before.
The real aha moment too is that it was just focusing on an infrastructure problem, like trying to actually make like a scalable blockchain. Literally just like this just sort of came out of that. It blossomed. You got to keep tackling the core problems, you know what I mean, until we really have something we can start building on. And shit like this is just going to pop out, man. I think it's going to change everything, and honestly, I hope it starts to get other centralized exchanges to almost follow suit. And this type of like open order book and direct swap and just real fidelity and provenance over like your interaction with the whole exchange process. It's something that needs to exist in exchanges, even on ordinary like normal exchanges as well. So we're really excited to push that forward however we can.
It also talks about like the oracleizing of data, like third-party oracles, which is like where does that fit into decentralization? If we're querying a third party to tell us what is the price, where are they getting that data from? it's so obscure, and they'll point to centralized exchanges who themselves are obfuscating
Or manipulating.
So like, what is the reality?
Stack of cards.
You know,
A stack of cards or
Yeah.
a house
It's
of
a house
cards.
of
it's a house of
Yeah,
cards.
yeah.
So what if, like, in a sense, where you flip the script, where the price and the decentralized open order book of all possible buy and sell orders is open knowledge for everyone at all times, and so oracles are almost unnecessary, or if they are, people can create oracles off our giant mempool, where it's a giant liquidity pool, where this is the true price of which individuals are transacting at any time.
Yeah, this is the order book. I mean, the order book
Yeah.
should be the oracle, man. You
Yeah,
know, that
the order
is
book.
the oracle.
Hell yeah.
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 And no listing fees.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Come
Oh
on.
yeah, the
Yeah.
extortionist
Oh my
listing
God.
fees.
Yeah.
Like, get the
Yeah.
fuck out of
Yeah.
here. Like,
So
Yeah.
like we can basically enable anyone to launch on our network with no listing fees.
No listing fees, which is a huge roadblock with a lot of these crypto startups, where they have to raise so much VC money just to be able to, like,
Yeah.
pay
The toll.
pay the toll to
Pay the
these
piper.
tier 1 exchanges, which are just basically highway robbery, and just there's no need for it anymore. Take all that money and hire developers. Take all that
Yeah.
money and distribute it to your community for incentives. Like, there's no need for it anymore. And
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, look, you know, in a lot of ways, like, the blockchain industry was meant to sort of disrupt the cloud computing industry, and this goes even as far back as Ethereum, the first DApp platform. But like, there's something that's even, you know, so there is a platform issue with the cloud space and the wider whole tech world, absolutely. But in crypto, we have our own problem, and it's the whole listing fee process, getting on centralized exchanges, and basically extortion afterwards, where they just sort of like decide to say, hey, we think we can squeeze you to spend more money on a market maker to like add more liquidity and, you know, wash trades to this thing. So we're just going to sort of push you as far as we can go. And if we don't really care, we'll just fucking kick you out anyway and take that whole giant deposit that you gave us. And it's like, this is straight up mafioso level shit. Like, if you want to talk about what's really holding crypto back, it's the fact that there's really no like organic economy for this thing to grow. I mean, like, that is the centralized boogeyman that needs to be ripped out of crypto, and that's why I think we're going to have the next real big ICO boom on our network, because, well, not only can you list a token, like launch a token, but you can list it directly, like list it by creating your own swap pairs with Bitcoin, Ethereum, with Net Token, and that's the free exchange listing that they can't get you by the balls for, man. You know, like, you're free.
Oh, and then,
that
by the
rocks.
way, you can host the damn app.
You can host the app.
Yeah,
on
yeah,
it,
yeah,
too.
yeah.
You don't have to worry about the exchanges. You don't have to get screwed by AWS. It's your own. This
don't
is
have to
your own thing.
Yeah.
man. You're free.
you're free.
Yeah, you don't have to bootstrap like a community and explain them how to fucking install Node software and load this up into Linux and host it and manage it and just all the pains that go around. Or if you look at like proof of work, you know, Bitcoin rigs that are like consuming exorbitant amount of energy.
Ridiculous.
Which we didn't even talk about that, but TUMI
yeah.
consensus energy efficiency is another big thing that enables DPIN, right? It's a prerequisite for DPIN. But,
DPIN, yeah.
But anyway, that's a sidetrack. But
Yes.
All right.
I wanted to talk about something really cool too, and just tie this all back to the beginning. So, why did we make reality? Well, I kind of had a pipe dream to sort of understand, like, what the fuck is actually, like, what is, like, awareness and beingness, like, incarnate? You know what I mean? What is something that's, like, so reactive that it can sort of self-perpetuate itself? And in a lot of ways, that's exactly, like, what part of our consensus process does. And this is also my headiness. Yes, I'm getting to something really tangible and cool that, like, I actually built in code this summer. And so our whole developer API uses this concept called a monad. And a monad is a way that we can handle specifically in programming something called concurrency or asynchronous programming. Basically, how can we use all of the resources on a computer at the same time in order to make something a little bit faster? It's like using all the cylinders in your engine or something, or you know, pulling a cart with 2 horses versus 1. And this whole kind of paradigm has really, that is the shift that's happened from like the time when ordinary blockchains, the original L1s, were created to now. We've basically moved into this paradigm where we use something called like monadic computing. And what's really cool about that, in addition to like being able to directly interoperate with like highly like performant Web 2 applications, you know what I mean? Like not just an ordinary HTTP server, but like like a real like complex like microservices architecture that maybe a bigger company has, and being able to create complex like jobs and queries across those. It actually like has this really interesting property around self-referentiality that allows us to come up with closed form programmatic solutions that can essentially just sort of self-perpetuate ad infinitum, assuming that you don't have a break in one of the three aspects of the CAP theorem, in our case partition tolerance. But that's super duper cool, and like, yeah, I just implore you to all check that out. And part of the whole kind of epiphany, so like with infrastructure plays, and this is kind of something that, you know, people are saying there's too much infrastructure out there in crypto, and I kind of I disagree. It's not that there's too much, it's that there's just that nobody's really made one that, you know, fulfills a collection of needs that a particular type of programmer wants. And I think that we do. And just to give you guys an example, about 10 years ago, there was one tool, a developer tool in the big data space that literally made the entire word big data matter. It was called Spark, and it was basically just like a rehash of Hadoop. But what it did is it actually created one of these monadic interfaces that made the like arduous multi-step, basically just like DevOps on top of DevOps, you know, type process necessary to run like massively scalable, you know, data processing jobs like Hadoop things. And ordinary people like could actually pop in here and like write jobs and like streaming pipelines and things like just analysts and whatnot, because we were able to encapsulate all of the real underlying low-level code, you know, necessary to run these things by using one of these monadic interfaces. So it's like worth $50 billion right now. It created an entire industry, and it's literally just goes to show that like the actual value in all of tech is developer tools. It always has been. It's not the gold, it's the shovel. I mean, that is the first thing you learn when you move to San Francisco is like, you're working for a gold company or a shovel company. And we are the shovel masters. And I'm certainly beating you over the head with a shovel with my diatribe right now. But the point is that that's actually built, and that's really just like a core feature as to how we're gonna make like all of the shit that we have here accessible and easy for people who don't have massive backgrounds to like, you know, write their own blockchain from scratch. We've encapsulated everything necessary to write your own blockchain from scratch inside of a tiny little interface that you can just put a few lines of code in, modify it, make it your own. You can put your own executable program in there, modify it, make it your own. You can add extra rules if you want to do governance votes and stuff using our API, all inside this tiny little thing. And we've basically taken what it takes to write your own custom blockchain and given it the simplicity of writing just a single smart contract. So it's like a super big deal. I mean, obviously, like is Keenan's ethos, well, both of ours actually, but obviously. But yeah, I just wanted to say that it's really cool. And if there was anything there, and almost a tidbit to add, is that to take a contrarian opinion right now, like, you are wrong. And that the actual values in infra, and we really need to continue dumping so much more time, money, and energy into fixing blockchain infrastructure, because it's going to be the thing that unlocks actual real world utility and usage, because you can't build fuck all with these L2s and shit. So we have to start over. Like, we can't just keep banging our heads against the wall, redoing the same thing over and over again. It's the definition of insanity. And I feel like I'm taking crazy pills.
Well, there's just so much fucking money circulating and pumped into the existing blockchain markets, like by VCs, and opportunists, you know, abound, including retail. I mean, let's be real, but like, it's just like it's like a bubble, basically. It's like, yeah. And like, it's gonna burst. It's kind of arguably already did in some measure, right? So it's just like, how do you go bring this into the future, right? How do we? What's the path forward?
I think talking about the Turing, like the
Halting problem.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
And okay. So let me say something bold. I think that the network, as it's designed, has like the ingredients of life itself. And you know, why do I think that? Erwin Schrödinger wrote a book a long time ago, What is Life? Actually, he delivered that paper at my alma mater, Trinity College Dublin, in like, I want to say the 50s, 60s. And basically he said, like, the key thing that makes life what it is, the definitive predicate of life, is neg entropy, which is the capacity to form coherent states, right? And basically he said that what happens with any living organism is that it takes like energy from its environment and it transforms it into a kind of negentropic internal state at the expense of the environment, typically. That's TUMI, right? In 100%. A nutshell, there's more like nuances to it, but really TUMI is essentially forging order in the network topology. And yeah, take it from there.
No, I mean, it actually, there's a lot of corollary to assembly theory, if you're familiar with that.
Oh, that's exactly what this shit is.
Yeah,
I was reading a lot of that stuff.
It's like basically just how do you form negentropic structures using physical materials to then encapsulate the entropy, right? But then you create a system that circulates that energy and it's like a productive
steady state.
Like human being or biological entity, or in this case what we're talking about is in cyberspace realm.
I think there might be two interesting things to hear Wyatt talk a bit more about. So one is this idea that you're solving a network topology problem, and the second is often you kind of talk about Hofstadter and the strange loop. So that could be an interesting bit to talk about.
Yeah, man, I probably could have done it. I've been going super heady on that whole music as a loop thing ever since that, last weekend. But yeah, it's kind of like a strange loop. Like, you think about the metaphor inside of that article where I talk about music, right? If you think about music being kind of like a closed loop, where essentially you're trying to figure out some kind of like, a recapitulating like refrain, basically from beginning to end. We might modulate it, but it always has a beginning and it always has an end, and we always sort of know how the path is gonna take place, right? Well, in the existence of some type of disharmony that can actually like change, basically like distort the loop so that it's not closed. Like what this mechanism is that the loop is basically able to untangle itself in real time and reconnect the loop. Now it sounds super heady, but in actuality, this is kind of a direct one-to-one description of something called homotopy type theory, where essentially we can use an understanding of a type or a hierarchy of data types in such a way that we can infer about program state based upon just the types that we're processing on, not even needing to look at the total global state of the network. And so to even take that a little bit further and talk about negentropy, like our system is a negentropic like engine, basically. What it does is it finds microstates such that it can optimize macro states the same way that you optimize the macro state of like eating food when you're hungry, or like, I don't know, going inside when you're cold. If you don't do that, you're gonna die. But it all really comes down due to the fact that like you feel internally cold, you start to shiver, and then you want to just optimize the microstates so that you can feel better on the macro states. You know what I mean? We do this every single day. And so that is honestly just a reformulation of, how do I put this? Yeah, I mean, it is a negentropic engine, and we see this in statistical thermodynamics all the time when we talk about semiconductors and stuff, but we can expand this even further. And so to take it just to the final thing, using these new types of like fractional operators, you can actually define in a closed form a self-perpetuating system whose ability to self-perpetuate is ergodic. So basically it can handle a level of chaos or disorder, or they'd say anti-fragile, but it's really just your ability to mitigate crazy external states that the system has to deal with, and as long as it's not too fucked up, you can come back and continue self-perpetuating. I think it's really cool, and in a lot of ways this was in my own personal just like, I don't know, seeking of like, what is reality and stuff, and trying to figure out how to understand that through building things. Yeah, I just kind of was like, what even really like am I, or are we experiencing? And I'd even say from a different perspective, like if you really go down, like if you hear what I just said right now, go like reread, like Feynman's first quantum electrodynamics thesis, right? In a lot of ways, like the actual nature of reality itself is kind of alive. You know what I mean? Like it itself is a living process, and it operates kind of on a particle level. But yeah, it just kind of gave me that weird feeling like, okay, I sort of see where I fit into this greater organism that I'm a part of. And it was fun. I am an existentialist addict, so I need my hit, baby. But yeah, I got that meaning. First hit's free.
Beautiful.
I I think like the other dynamic that ensures long-term sustainability of such a system, and which is inherent in all cryptocurrency, hence the currency part, is essentially the economic mechanics, like the tokenomics, if you will, of this meta network essentially that we're just describing here, that allows other networks to form and collapse based on all these different forces that we're talking about here, right? So designing that, I think, is like a critical piece to ensure there isn't this sort of like value extraction that might be subtle at first, but then 20 years from now is a cancer. Maybe that's what cancer is, actually, I think about it.
Or a parasite.
Yeah, well.
Where you're funneling energy into something that is not productive or cannot be recirculated into something else that is productive, right? So like making sure the value flows or has the freedom to flow is like, I think, a critical piece of this for this all to work, right? At a global scale.
Yeah, it's like living organisms, they're in a state of homeostasis, and they are able to allocate resources, be they minerals, vitamins, like proteins, around the body in such a way to sustain it. And I would say that's the analog for like reality, like it redistributes resources in a way that it enables its whole, body or corpus to thrive.
Yeah.
And that's how, we haven't talked about the generative economic aspect, but that's really what that is.
Yeah.
Dude, 100%. Also, just to drop in the network topology thing, like, it's the same way that like your blood vessels will constrict and change in order to increase blood flow to get to get blood cells to where it needs to go, the same way we need to get data to get where it needs to go. It's super cool. And yeah, I mean, generative economics in a lot of ways was a rehashing of that paper I talked about earlier, and like trying to create an open order book, and how that's really like the only way that you can create a truly like free market economy. And if you believe in free market economy, this is inherently like going to be better than the system we have, QED, which is dope. But another aspect about generative economics, or basically just to jump this down, is that on the side I like did this thing called generative calculus, which was basically trying to create closed form solutions for these negentropic processes or engines. So you can basically just like try to analyze life or like self-perpetuation as a calculus problem. Like how you can actually like calculate like how long or how well can this thing survive a certain, fucked up situation it has to deal with. And I mean, if we want to build resilient systems, something like, we could fly around in outer space with, like this basically gives us a way to calculate what can the hull of the spacecraft survive under, or, if we wanted to engineer some type of like sentient metamaterial, what kind of states could it survive in, and when would it break down and essentially just die. It was really cool. And it turns out that actually like life itself is kind of like it's an optimization problem. You know what I mean? You are a Lagrangian. I don't know if you guys know what that is, like finding the path of least action for, using your energy to program your microstates and then get the macro states that you need necessary, like feeling good or not. And so I think that's super cool, and we can use the same rules in order to model an economic system to be like, how healthy is this? Like how much arbitrage can it handle? Like how much information asymmetry can it handle before it basically becomes like a not free market again? I mean, these are quantifications we need in order to keep our policymakers in check when they fuck things up and do things like try to put in like price controls. Like we've heard someone on the news tried to do recently, which is like the worst joke I've ever heard. Like we remember the USSR. If we can quantify, like have a quantification even of how our policies and things work directly on the most tangible level, like in our economy, and talking about that in terms of creating a self-perpetuating economy that both works for us in the moment and can continue living on in the future and not end up in total like chaos and anarchy with like the world ending. I mean it's kind of it's helpful.
Yeah.
averting the apocalypse.
That's for sure.
Yeah.
I think it's very powerful that the network topology and the design is based on biomimicry, which is mimicking nature. It's like you
It
want,
literally is.
yeah, as opposed to like creating some sort of artificial complexities. It's like just look outside, look how forests heal themselves, look at our human bodies and how things work in self-regulating homeostasis. The network functions as a holographic model for that very same design. So
Yeah,
it's
we at
familiar.
Reality support Brian Johnson when he says, "Don't die."
All right.
All right.
In closing, we are really excited to build this technology as an offering to the world at large, and to be like, here, humanity, do something with this. It's here for you. Go create. All humans inherently are creating whatever they're doing. The impulse to offer the world something better than what it already has. I like to think that many of us have an inborn impulse to just leave the world better than we found it, be the change we want to see in the world, and reality is a way for that to happen. And so whether you're just sitting at home, you don't have any technical knowledge, and you're just like, how do I make a difference? How do I join reality? Well, you could just run a node on your phone. You could install it on your family members' phones and devices, and they can earn money. You'd be helping them. You'd be helping the networks that you believe in. There's a whole bunch, and there's a whole lot to get involved. And support us on socials and join our community, ask questions, get curious. We're here to support any and all great ideas. And in closing, I also just want to add that reality by its very design doesn't repel any ideas. So anything from meme coin communities to serious utility ideas to completely brand new infrastructure and healthcare and education can take place here. It's inclusive of every and any type of idea that anyone can come up with. So come one, come all. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, and like in terms of what you just described, like Reality Network kind of presents a platform for new opportunities, right? So if you have an idea that you want to host, and just whether it's experiment or scale it up to some serious business, right? Like you have that kind of spectrum, that flexibility, that elasticity to like kind of explore that. I think that's like critical, and as you said, like we're on Telegram. Correct me if I'm wrong.
Smash that subscribe button.
If you're not
Click the notification bell.
And watch our next video.
It's like beyond a caricature, though. It's like I don't even know there's a new word they need to describe that.
If you're not smashing enough, you should be smashing our buttons.
There we go, dude.
All right.
Yes, we are a revolution, birthing a nation of unfettered creation.
Oh, there we go.
There.
That's a wrap.
That's a
You have
wrap.
to follow that, by the way.
You can just do things. Find people you like and build something cool.
Yeah.
Build
Don't overcomplicate this.
Also, we got sick ass swag, so check out our merch shop. New designs dropping every Friday.
Socks incoming.
Socks incoming. We got a sock guy.
All right.
Cool.
Cheers, guys.
Cheers.